Hello and welcome to this NTD training session. What is NTD? What does it stand for? NTD is the abbreviation for numbering, table of contents and doc ID. These are all solutions that are a word add-in, sits in its own ribbon tab, as you can see on the screen here, NTD, and it enables users to easily view, add, edit and insert numbering, table of contents and doc IDs with ease. So the first thing I'd like to look at is the interface. So on the NTD ribbon tab, there is a number group, table of contents, doc ID. When there is no numbering whatsoever in a document, the numbering group will actually be collapsed with only a refresh button and the add modify button. So what I'm going to do is actually open up a document that does have numbering in, and you can see how this group will expand to reflect the numbering within the actual document. I'm just going to change the view for training purposes to the draft view, so you can see in the style area width that this is type numbers and it's all styled in normal. When I look at the NTD tab and the numbering group, there is still no numbering in the document. So therefore I will actually have to import numbering in order to apply that numbering into this document. I can easily do that by clicking onto the Add Modify button or the dialog launcher on the numbering group. When I click onto the Add Modify button, the task pane will appear, and in the task pane there is a tool strip of bright buttons. There's also an active document area, that is your working area, and you have the default schemes. The default schemes is in a yellow folder with a star. That star means it is an enterprise folder and only the NTD administrator can make any changes within the numbering schemes in that folder. If I expand the folder, then I can see that I have these little green circles. These are predefined sample numbering schemes for you to use should you wish. All of the numbering schemes have been set up in font Times New Roman and size 12. If I click onto any of these numbering schemes, I can see from the preview area the type of numbering and the patterns, the bold, the indents, and I can just go through and see whichever numbering I would like to use in this document. Now, in order to import the numbering, there are two ways I can do this. I can either drag and drop a numbering scheme from the default folder, default schemes folder, into the active document, or I can do a right click. Using the right click gives me option to insert into the document or insert into the document update font to match normal. So as I said, the numbering schemes in the default schemes folder are set up in Times New Roman size 12. If you would like the numbering to match whatever is in the document, the font and font size, then we would always recommend you use insert document update font to match normal. So looking through the numbering schemes, I can see that I think, looking at the patterns on the screen, that I would like to use the legal outline 2 numbering. So I'm going to right click and insert document update font to match normal. Whatever the normal style is in my document, the numbering will also adhere to that. So I can see now that I have got a numbering scheme in my active document. This is my working area, and I can make any edits to this numbering scheme should I so wish. So once I've actually imported the numbering into my document, I would now like to apply that numbering. There are different ways that you can apply the numbering to the document. There is no right or wrong way, just a way that you prefer. So I'll demonstrate the different choices. It depends what mood I'm in. It depends on which method I use. So as you'll see from the ribbon, the numbering group has expanded to show that, yes, I have a numbering scheme in this document. I only have the one, so there's nothing else in the drop down except for the legal outline 2 scheme. The numbers 1 to 9 reflect the same levels that are actually in the preview pane area in the task pane. These are different levels of numbering that I could choose. If the buttons are not active, they're grayed out, all that means is the numbering scheme within that particular document only have maybe 6 levels or 5 levels. They don't have all the 9 levels used. So what I can do I could use the 1, 2, 3 buttons on the ribbon. I can use the level markers 1, 2, 3, etc. in the task pane in the preview near the preview area. Or alternatively, I can actually drag and drop the numbering scheme from the active document into the document. So if I drag and drop legal outline 2 to the very last paragraph in my document, then I can see straight away that the legal outline 2 has been applied. I changed the view in my document so you can see the paragraph changing from normal style to outline level 1. I can do that to the top paragraph as well. So like I say, there are various different ways that you can actually apply the numbering. I could have selected all of the text and then drag and drop the numbering from my task pane into my document. You can see that now all the numbering has been applied. So there's one way that I can actually apply the numbering. I could also, as I said, use the 1, 2, 3 buttons on the ribbon. So I'm going to change the third paragraph to level 3. I can click onto the 3 button. You can see it changes it to the third level down, which is A in this document. I have the options to restart the numbering and continue numbering on the ribbon. I can also promote and demote the numbering. So I have these little buttons here, so I can choose to use those. As you can see, I'm just promoting or demoting the numbering if I'm not quite sure which level I would like to apply in this document. I can also use tab on my keyboard. So as you can see, I'm just pressing tab on the keyboard or shift tab to go backwards. If I am choosing to use the drag and drop method from the task pane, I can select text. So if I select using shift and click, then drag and drop the numbering into the selected text, all the numbering will be applied. However, if I select text just by randomly using my control key and choosing maybe the first and last paragraph, if I was to drag and drop the legal outline 2 numbering scheme from my active document in the task pane into those paragraphs, only the last paragraph will be applied. So just be aware if you are using the drag and drop method. Now I realise that I would prefer actually the legal outline 3 level. So I made a mistake, oops. So now I'd like to swap out that numbering, and I've applied that numbering. So it's not a problem. All I have to do is actually swap that numbering. I can choose to hold down my shift key and drag and drop the legal outline 3 over the top of the legal outline 2 in the active document, or I can right click from the default schemes enterprise folder and choose swap apply styles. If I had more than one numbering scheme on my document, they'd be listed, and I would just choose which of the numbering schemes I'd like to swap out. I'm going to choose to right click and swap out. So as you can see now in the preview area, I can also see that this has changed. In my document, I can see that this has applied the numbering to the text without me having to do any work really. Just swapping the numbering scheme out with the new one will automatically swap out the applied styles in the paragraph 2. Now, what if I don't want to have a number on, say, the paragraph that starts with save time in the word with new buttons? So if I don't want to have this paragraph to have a numbered item next to it, and I just want it to be flush, there are different choices you can make, but whatever you do, do not backspace over a numbered paragraph. If I backspace, yes, it looks like I actually do get the desired effect. However, the style is still applied to that paragraph, and it will come back at any time when you least expect it to. So there are 2 correct ways in removing a numbered paragraph and changing it to a non-numbered paragraph. On your ribbon, the buttons look similar, and they do pretty similar things, but it all depends on what you'd like to do. So the first button is remove number and retain formatting. If I choose this option, then yes, it removes the number, but it also changes the style. I just increase the size of my style area width pane. You can see that yes, I have the original style was an outline level. 3, but it's got body text next to it. So the body text is just signifying this style is now a non-numbered style, but it used to be an outline 3. So some firms don't like to use that because it does change the style name. So I'm just going to undo. The second option you have is to remove the number and apply body text. So this will actually remove the number and just apply body text in the document. So it goes right back to the left-hand margin. And then you can choose if you want to use body text 1, body text 2, or apply a different non-numbered style to that paragraph. So like I say, there are different ways of doing it. It all depends on the scenario. Your NTD administrator can default the remove number and apply body text to a different style if you prefer. So if you'd always want it to be apply body text 1, then your NTD administrator can do that for you. Okay, so that is importing numbering and applying numbering. Now, although I can create numbering from scratch, it is much easier to use an existing scheme and modify it and then save it for future use. Now, as a general user, I cannot create or modify numbering schemes stored in the default schemes enterprise folder. As a general user, all I can do is create and modify schemes in the active document. So that is in this active document. I can modify or create schemes there and then save them off later on if I'd like to do that. As an NTD administrator, however, I can create and modify schemes stored in the default schemes folder. However, it is best practice to create or modify numbering schemes in an active document and then store them in the default schemes folder as an administrator. Okay, so I'm going to show you how we can do that, and also what we're likely to see if we open up a client document and they have the firm's numbering schemes in there as well. So the beauty of the numbering group is you can use them on your own documents. If you open up a client document, then you will see all of the numbering schemes within that document in alphabetical order. Like I said earlier, there may be that the 1 to 9 buttons are not active. That is because of the numbering scheme. So in the bullets, there are only 6 numbering levels. In definitions, there are only 3. So the numbering group will reflect how that numbering scheme has actually been created. In order to open up the task pane, I'm going to use a dialog launcher this time. And the reason I'm going to open up the dialog launcher is because I would like to modify the schemes in this document. You will notice that the tool strip within the task pane also has similar buttons to the buttons on the numbering group. There are a few that are different. We have a navigate button, which is useful, and also we can use the little button at the end, edit with Word. We'll just open up the native word styles dialog task pane, saves you time. What I'd like to do is actually show the navigate. So if I'd like to navigate quickly to the schedule schemes, the levels on that scheme, I can click into the schedule scheme in the active document. Don't forget, this is my working area within the document. And I can see in the preview pane that I do have a view of what the numbering looks like. So in order for me to quickly navigate to the levels, of the schedule scheme, I can click onto the level 1 in the preview pane. It's very slight, but you can see there is quite a little bit of shading as I click into the preview pane area. Now I'd like to navigate to the schedules 1 and schedules 2, etc. So as long as I have clicked into the preview pane, I can click onto the navigate button and it will take me straight there. So you can see just navigate through the schemes. And that's great if you just want to navigate through the heading 1s of a document and things like that. So as I said, I can create numbering schemes from scratch, or alternatively, I can choose one that is close to the one I would like to create, and then I can modify that. So for example, I would like to create a numbering scheme for schedules, but rather than having schedule 1 and part A, I'd like it the other way around. I'd like it to show schedule A and part 1, so I can use that in the future. So in order to modify the scheme, I can right click in the preview area, and here I can see the different options that I can choose. I could choose to edit all of the levels in one go, but that is quite limited. There are certain things that you cannot edit all in one go, which kind of makes sense. For example, the numbering, but you could probably change the numbering font throughout all of those 9 levels, or the paragraph indents and things like that. However, I just want to update and modify the level 1 of the schedule scheme. So I'm going to right click and choose Edit Level 1. So I have 4 tabs to choose from, but it's the main numbering that I'd like to look at here. So in the Level tab, then I can change the number font, the number style, the positions, what follows when you press Enter, things like that. So where we have number format, schedule are the words that appear in the numbering scheme. Little 1 in a circle is the level. So I'd like to change the level 1 from schedule 1 to schedule A. So therefore I would leave the number format and just change the number style. When I click on the drop-down arrow for the number style, I can choose one of many options, but I'd like to choose the uppercase ABC option. I also would like to be able to enter text after the schedules, so I could have a soft return or a manual line break. In the slide out for modifying numbering schemes, it's under the other options. Follow a number with nothing is by the default on this numbering scheme, but I'd like to choose one line break. So one line break is also known as a soft return. Now, rather than click onto the green OK button and moving on to my next level, I have these little chevron items on the right hand side and on the left hand side. This is how I can navigate to the next level. When I click onto the next level, I can see I'm now in level 2, and where I have part 2, part is the wording part of the numbering scheme, and 2 is the level. So this time I'm going to swap these and say I don't want to have ABC in my parts. I just want to have part 1, 2, 3, and I can change that. I don't want to have a soft return underneath there because I wouldn't be likely to be typing any text underneath there. I can click onto the chevron button again, and I can now navigate to the 3rd level. You can see that also in the preview area, as I'm navigating through the chevron little buttons, that the preview area is also showing that. Now, as I say, we have got 4 tabs in the modify slide out. So I have touched on the level tab. We have a number font. So we could change the font, size, underline, all caps. You've also have 2 other options here, copy from paragraph and always inherit. So basically to set the number font to match the paragraph quickly, you just need to click onto the copy from paragraph. So if you'd already set the paragraph to have a certain font type and a certain font size, then you can just click on the copy from paragraph. The always inherit is really useful. This is when the numbers font should automatically update if the paragraph font was also changed. So that's quite a useful button there. Under paragraph, we have the font size, it was next, the usual things that you would see in a paragraph formatting dialog. And then we have the running heading. And the running heading is if you are creating a numbering scheme where part of the and only part of the text will be included in the table of contents, then you can actually create your running style here from the drop-down arrow. You've got quite a few choices there. If you make a choice here of your running heading style, then that will also follow through into the table of contents task pane. It won't actually apply the table of contents with that setting in there, but it will be in the task pane for you to use, so you don't have to do it twice. And once you've made all your changes, I'm happy. We just check that I'm happy with level 2. It's going to be part 1, and level 1 is going to be schedule A. Perfect. And now I can click onto the little green OK button. And you'll see I have my show hide on the screen, so you can see in the document I have my soft return, and then if I wanted to, I can actually type in some text here, which I will do. I'd also like to create a numbering scheme with 1.1, 1.1 up to about 5 or 6 levels, and then I would like to use that in the future. So what I can do is, rather than creating it from scratch, I can see in my active document there isn't really anything there that is similar to that. That goes down to level 1, but I'd like further levels. I'm going to have a look in my default schemes and see if there's anything there that would be useful to me. As I click onto the numbering schemes, I can see a preview. And I think this decimal outline numbering scheme is probably the closest match of the numbering scheme I would like to create. So I'm going to insert this into my document. I right click in, insert document, update font to match normal, and then I can go ahead and happily modify that. So one thing I will say is really all I want to, I love the numbering, I just want to change all the indents. So a quick way of doing that is by right clicking on the numbering scheme within the active document area and choosing to indent all levels at default tab stop. You can see that it's changed that straight away. Now that might be great. I think the tab stop is working well. If I create a new document and find that I would like to change these indents, I can do that just by right clicking and indent all levels at 0 again, or I could actually work my way through the different levels and change the indent there, or the tab stops. So I can see the tab stop is at 1/4 of an inch. I might want to make that to 1/2 an inch. I might want to make level 2 an inch. I might want to make the tab stop after level 3 is 1.5 inches. So you can see that I can go through and still make the changes to the numbering scheme, even though I've chosen to indent it default tabs. I can still go through and make some more changes. Now I'm happy with all of the numbering schemes that I have changed, the outline, decimal outline and the schedule, and I'd like to save those for future use. I'm just going to collapse the default schemes folder so I can see more of this task pane. So if you have any numbering schemes that you'd like to save for the future, as long as you have the open document on screen, you can see the numbering schemes within the active document area, then you can actually store those numbering schemes really, really easily. First of all, though, you need to have a personal folder to save the numbering schemes into. So in order for me to create my own personal folder, I can right click into the blank area of the task pane and add new personal folder. And I can give that folder a name. Notice the difference in the icons. So the yellow folder is my personal folder. The yellow folder with a star is an enterprise folder. It just shows you the difference. As a user, I can only use the default schemes to import numbering. I cannot make any changes or store anything into the default schemes folder. Only the NTD administrator can do that. So there are different ways that you can save numbering schemes into your personal folder. So I can take the schedule scheme and I can left mouse click, drag and drop into my schemes. You can see that it saved it straight away. Alternatively, I can click onto the decimal outline numbering, right click, and then save the multi-level list into my schemes. Like I said, there's no right way or wrong way of doing anything within the numbering feature, just a way that you prefer. And that is how I can use the numbering group to import numbering, to apply numbering, to modify or create numbering, and to store numbering. Now I'd like to move on to the table of contents feature. So the table of contents has a group that is very similar in that it grows. So with the numbering group, that started off with only the refresh and add modify button until there was numbering within the document, which I have a list of. The table of contents, if there is no table of contents in the document whatsoever, you will see that you only have 5 options here. When you insert a table of contents, this table of contents group will grow to show you how you can navigate to multiple table of contents, or even a table of contents. You can update and you can remove the table of contents. So the table of contents functionality simplifies managing table of contents, tables of tables or tables of figures, It's very easy to view, add and edit, generate table of contents. These could be the firm's preferred table of contents. It's been predefined with the firm's styles, as well as just maintaining a table of contents in the client document. So this document doesn't have a table of contents in it yet. There is a table of contents scheme drop down. And if I click on that drop down, there are 6 options to choose from. So the 6 options are dependent on the outline level in the document. So standard is the name of the enterprise folder. Level 1 means it's going to be all the level 1 numbering. Levels 1 and 2 or levels 1 to 3. So you have choices there on how many levels you'd like to include in your table of contents. The new section option is additional. So all that means is that it will create a table of contents page for you, as well as inserting the table of contents. That table of contents page will have the wording of table of contents and page in the header, and it will insert the relevant section breaks for you. So I do not need to launch a task pane in order to insert a table of contents. I can do it directly from the ribbon. The nice thing is, because the table of contents is using the native Word fields as such, then the table of contents will travel with the document, and it can be updated and maintained by the client or anybody outside of using the Litera NTD functionality. So have a look at my document. I believe that I would like to choose levels 1 and 2. Have a quick look. Yeah, so I've got headings level 1 and level 2. I'm going to use 2 levels here. I do have an empty table of contents page in my document, so I prefer to actually insert the table of contents at cursor. However, you do have different options on the insert button there. It's a split button. The first thing I need to do is choose standard levels 1 and 2, because I'm telling the table of contents functionality I'd like to include the 2 levels of the numbering in the document. The insert button is a split button, so you can see that as I'm moving my mouse, it is split. The default split of the button is going to insert at cursor. The drop down arrow gives me option to insert at the very top of the document or at the very end of the document. So I'm going to choose the insert at cursor. Now, the table of contents does actually bring in all of the outline numbering within the document at levels 1 and levels 2. It all depends on how the document has been set up as to what is going to be brought into the document. So I can see that it has brought in more than I had expected with all the level 1s and the level 2s, the outline level. That is by default. That is what the table of contents does. So I have no choice but to modify and tell the system, actually, I only want these certain styles or this certain outline numbering to be included. Now, this may happen if you're using a client document or a document where you're not familiar and you don't know what the outline numbering is in the document. However, for your own firm-wide table of contents, they can be pre-configured, so they would only bring in your preferred styles at the different levels for the table of contents. You will notice also that the table of contents group has expanded, it's grown. So now I can navigate to the table of contents using the navigation drop down and the find button. I can update or I can remove the table of contents. I need to modify the table of contents though. So I can click onto the modify button or the dialog launcher, and it will open up the task pane. I just like to mention as well, if I had placed my cursor in the middle of text and then try to generate a table of contents, little pop-up will appear to say, do you really want to continue and insert your table of contents in the middle of some text, which is nice for the warning. So in the task pane, the table of contents task pane, I can see the standard folder. The standard folder's got a star in. So this is an enterprise folder. And within that standard folder, I have the same options as I have from the ribbon. The active document area is the area that we will be working in. You can only ever work there as a general user. So you can see that I have a table of contents 1. So if I had more, it'd be 2, 3, etc. But I'd like to expand the table of contents, and then I can see the levels of the numbering that has been included in the table of contents. When I click onto level 1, I can see at the very bottom the actual styles that are included. So I know that I don't want to include the definitions, outline level 1. I don't want to include the level 1 number, outline level 1, but I do want to include the schedule heading and the main headings. I also would like to change the format to all caps. This is quite useful if your styles are set up with like an all caps feature. And when you're typing, you could be in the completely the wrong case, and your table of contents reflects that. You might have toggle case characters in your table of contents. If I choose a format of all caps for my table of contents, doesn't matter how I've typed it in, my table of contents is always going to be consistent with all caps. Clicking on to level 2, I can also choose which styles I do not want to be included just by unticking the 2 styles I don't want. So heading level 2, I think I still want that one. I still want the parts to be included. Now, if I want to include any more styles, I can click onto the green arrow and then just choose the styles to be included. So you can exclude and include the styles that you'd like to be generated with the table of contents. If I click onto the TOC table of contents one at the very top of the task pane, I can use the tool strip button to update the table. So if I click onto this button, my table of contents has been updated and it looks much better. I've only got the styles that I wanted to be included, and it's all in caps. Now I notice also as I scroll down that the schedules are in bold, and that is because at the bottom of the task pane I have right align page numbers as a default, and also keep direct formatting, and there's obviously some direct formatting on the schedules. If you do not want to keep the direct formatting, you can uncheck keep direct formatting box, and you can click onto the update table in the task pane, or you can click on the update button in the ribbon. It's like I said, there's no right way or wrong way to do that. Now, if I look at my table of contents again, that looks much better. Now, the other options I have at this level of a table of contents is use hyperlinks. Use hyperlinks is just ensuring that the entire line of the table of contents is a hyperlink, not just a page number. So at the moment, if I hover over the page number, I get control and click to follow that link, whereas at the beginning of the text, I don't get that. Use hyperlinks will make that entire line a hyperlink. We do want to line the page numbers. We've shown there, we didn't want to keep the direct formatting. I didn't want to keep any tabs characters. And if I wanted to, then I could keep the new line characters. The new line characters are those soft returns. So if I've got them in this document, let me have a quick look. I can right click and update the table there. If I had any soft returns, it would show in the schedules, which I don't. But they are the options that you have under the task pane when you have inserted the table of contents. When you've identified the styles that you'd like to include in that table of contents, you have these other options too. Now, in updating a table of contents, as you saw then, I could use 3 different options. Now, you can use F9, which is the native word way of updating a table of contents, but that will only update the page numbers or the entire table in the table of contents. Any of the formatting that I have actually chosen to captivate in the table of contents task pane, you must use the NTD way of updating the table. Now, what if I'd like to have multiple table of contents in my document? I can do that very, very easily. So I'm going to navigate to Schedule 2. So in Schedule 2, it may be that just for the schedule, I'd also like to have a table of contents. So you can put in multiple table of contents quite easily. So some documents actually have a different numbering scheme for the main body of the document and a different scheme for the schedule part of the document. If I look at the numbering schemes here, I can see that. So they've used heading 1 or heading throughout the main body of the document, and they have their own schedule numbering for the schedule part of the document. If that is the case, then it is very, very easy for me to insert a table of contents for the schedule. So again, I'm going to choose the drop down arrow for my ribbon. I just find it's easier to choose it from here. I don't particularly want to right click and start creating a table of contents from scratch when I can do it from the ribbon and just modify it. I'm going to choose to insert at cursor, just a level 1. Again, as we saw previously, the outline numbering within the document will automatically be included by default. And you'll see in the task pane, I now have a second table of contents. If I navigate to that second table of contents in the task pane, I can make the same choices, remove the direct formatting, expand the second table of contents, and then choose which styles I'd like to include. I don't want definitions, I don't want the headings, I just want schedules, or the schedule heading 1. So I've just deselected everything in that styles list, and now I'm going to use the little green arrow and navigate to the style I would like to include in the table of contents. This is a schedule heading I'd like to include. So I'm going to choose schedule heading 1, click on OK. Again, I like to have all caps, and I just need to update that table of contents. Now, now that I've got more than one table of contents in my document, I can navigate to them. So just by clicking on the drop down arrow on the ribbon, choosing contents 1 and the little find button, I can navigate to those table of contents. And this is quite important if you are updating a table of contents or if you're removing a table of contents and you have more than one table of contents in the document. You just want to make sure that you have the right or the correct table of contents highlighted before you either update or remove. Now, in some firms, they do like to have the same numbering throughout the document, but again, more than one table of contents. If that is the case, then we do have documentation on how you can do that. It's using a native word switch in the table of contents. You bookmark the text, then you use the switch in the table of contents. So we can send you the documentation on that if you desire. So let me get back to the beginning. So that is creating a table of contents from the ribbon and then just modifying it. Like I say, you can right click in the active document area, create a table of contents from scratch and manually decide which styles you'd like to go in. Like I said, there's no right way or wrong way, just a way that you prefer. And sometimes it's what the document determines, depending on how complicated the document is and how many styles in the document, you might want to do it in that way. As I said, the table of contents is relying on outline numbering within the document to create that table of contents. However, there may be an occasion where you'd like to insert some text into table of contents, but you don't have any outline numbering applied to that text. So for instance, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to type in body text, it's not or normal text. I'm going to type in and make it bold and centered. So I'm just typing in section 1. And I'm going to center it. Now this text I'd like to include in the table of contents, but it doesn't have any outline numbering. So I can manually mark this for the table of contents. Very, very easy to do. I just need to select the text, decide which table of contents I would like this text to appear in, choose one and expand it. Now I expanded it to decide, well, which level of the table of contents would I like to include this text in. So I'm going to choose level 1. All I have to do is drag and drop the section 1 wording over to my task pane and then let go over the level 1. So as you can see, because I have my show hide on, I'm showing all of the paragraph marking in the document, and I'm also showing all of the hidden text. So please do not worry about the squiggly brackets and the TC code. That is by default a native Word feature when you are manually marking a table of contents. They do not print, they don't show, like I say, when you do your print preview, they're just because I've got my show hide on. And what I can do, I know that the table of contents has already been updated automatically. I didn't have to go and update it. So if I navigate to the first table of contents, I can see it's appeared here as section 1. So you can manually mark entries for a table of contents as well. So they're nice and easy ways of inserting a table of contents, modifying a table of contents, and manually marking text for a table of contents. Now, there may be an occasion where I would like to include only part of the text to be included in a table of contents, but it's made up of an entire paragraph. So we would use a style separator. So what is a style separator? A style separator allows you to separate running headings from text. So you only get that text in a table of contents. For example, in this document, if I just change the view and open up my navigation pane, go to clause 2.1. In fact, I've got quite a few clauses, 2.1, 2.2. That's an entire paragraph, but I only really want to have the first part of it included in the table of contents. So we do that by using run-in headings, and we can create a table of contents in that way. Now, there are two ways you can generate a table of contents with running headings. One is actually individually inserting a style separator, or the other one is from the actual table of contents task pane. It all depends on the document and the scenario in which you are working. For example, it may be that you're working on a document that already has style separators in there, and all you need to do is continue adding more text and adding 1 or 2 new style separators. You can do that from the table of contents group. As long as you have your cursor in the correct position, which I have after the period, the full stop, and then I can choose Insert Style Separator. You can see it to put the separator in for me. So you can do it that way. If I do a second one, just choose that. That's all you need to do is put the style separator in there. And when you generate the table of contents, I go to the top of the page, you will see that those 2 paragraphs will come in with the first sentence only. I only did 2 to show you how this works. So in the scenario of you already have a document with style separators in, you just have to add a little bit more text and maybe apply the outline to numbering, and then just add 1 or 2 style separators to an existing document with style separators. That is probably the easiest thing to do. Okay, so if I go to the top, you can see that I only did, I think, 2.1 and 2.2. Now, I'm not prepared to go through the entire document and add in more separators because this is not the ideal document to do that with. So I'm going to make sure that I've got just the one. I'm going to remove that table of contents. And I'm also going to remove the style separators that I entered. So now I can show you, because of the way this document has been set up and there were no style separators in there in the first place, no table of contents, I can show you an easier way of doing this. So I'm just going to remove the style separators that I had inserted. Get back to the way my document was. Okay. So what I can do is easily just go through and insert the table of contents at cursor position, as I have done. And as I say, this type of document is basically one that didn't have any style separators in there. It is full of main paragraphs, but I only want to include the first sentence. And looking at the document, it has 2 spaces after that period or full stop. So I can use the dialog launcher to modify the table of contents. I have my active document area. When I expand the table of contents and go to level 2, then I can see that the options at the very bottom starts with whole paragraph and dots. So previously I'd mentioned that if you have set up running headings in the numbering scheme to start with, this will be reflected in this task pane here. This document wasn't set up with running headings to start off with, but we can create them on the fly. So all I need to choose is, rather than inserting the entire paragraph for level 2 of my table of contents, I would just like to choose first sentence 2 spaces, because I can see that's how this document has been set up. And then I can just modify and update, take off direct formatting, update that table of contents. You can see now it's going through and it's just grabbing that first sentence. And that's a much better looking table of contents. Okay, so we've covered generating and inserting a basic table of contents, a table of contents where you'd actually modify the table of contents because it's brought in all of the outline numbering by default. It may be a client document that you're working on and just inserting it. Then you can actually modify that table of contents. You can add text to a table of contents that isn't part of an outline numbered paragraph. And also we can work with documents where we only want the first sentence of the paragraph included in the table of contents. We can also create a table of contents that has tables or figures in a document. So if you have a document that has table references that have been created with captions, then I can create a table of contents to list those tables. So that is what I'm going to demonstrate now. So again, I'm just going to place my cursor at the beginning of the document to make it easier for you to see. This one I do have to create from scratch. The reason being is that there isn't a default numbering scheme here that matches tables and captions. These are all about outline numbering. So I can click on the dialog launcher or the modify button and launch the task pane, and then I can create a table of tables or a table of figures or a table of appendices. If I right click in the active document area, I will get that list of options. Create table of contents, tables, figures, or appendices. I'm going to choose tables. Now, when you choose to create either tables or figures, you don't get that many options except for the format. So again, I do like to have all caps in my table of contents, but you don't have to. At the level of the table of contents itself, you have the same options. Use a hyperlink, underline the numbers. I don't want to keep direct formatting. I do want to include the page number. Now, because I just did a right click and I created it, I still have to insert it. And I can do that either by using the little green arrow on the tool strip for inserting to document, or I can right click and choose insert table at cursor at the top or at the end. So I can click into that. And then I have my table of tables. So that's a nice feature as well. Now I've been actually creating table of contents, modifying table of contents. I may want to save those for future use. So if I go back to my table of contents document, this is where I had actually modified the table of contents to only include certain things. I had a table of contents for the main body of the document, and I had a main table of contents for the schedule part of the document, and I may want to store those. I can create a personal folder in my table of contents task pane, and I can store those in there. As a general user, I cannot create or modify the table of contents in the standard enterprise folder. As an NTD administrator, I can create or modify table of contents in the standard folder. However, it's always best practice to do it in the active document area and then save it into the relevant folder. So in order to create a personal folder, I just have to right click in the blank area and add new personal folder. I'm going to give the personal folder a name. And then if I'd like to store the two table of contents that I had created or modified earlier, I can do that. It's very easy to do. You can only do one at a time. So whenever you're dragging anything, either a number or a table of contents, into a personal folder, you can only do one at a time. So I can drag the first table of contents, left click and drag over to my TOCs folder. Now it's not very descriptive, doc table of contents 1, but I do know that is for the main body of my document. So I can right click and I can rename the table. I'm going to call that my heading TOC, like my main heading. For the second table of contents, this was for my schedules, so I can drag and drop that into my TOCs personal folder. And I can right click and rename that as well. The schedule TOC. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to close all of my documents and show you how you can use your saved numbering and your saved table of contents. Have anything else open? So, as I said, if you have a document with no numbering schemes in, you've saved your numbering schemes in your personal folder to use for future use. You can click onto an Add Modify button, expand your My Schemes folder, whatever you've called your personal folder, and then insert into document. So this was a scheme I saved earlier because I really liked the part A and the part 1, or schedule A, part 1, etc. And I can go through and just apply that numbering either from the task pane or from the ribbon, a few shortcut keys. When it comes to my table of contents, then because I'd already saved a table of contents for the schedule that I'd used earlier, you can do the same thing. Use the navigate dialog launcher to expand your task pane, expand your TOCs. Didn't save my names. Okay, so I'll just rename that again. That was my schedule. Maybe I was a bit too quick and I didn't refresh. I maybe should have refreshed. So I do have a refresh button on my tool strip, or I also have a refresh button on the numbering group. Although the refresh button on the numbering group, it actually does refresh both the numbering and the TOCs. And then I can just insert that table of contents. Also, I haven't refreshed. If I was to close out completely, I should see my TOCs folder and the levels also to choose from on this ribbon.